Hello everyone, this is Waz from MarketsAI. Welcome to a two-part video series designed to give the viewer a clear understanding of how the data contained in Exchange PCAP files can be transformed into valuable information about your order executions. Let's begin with a very clear understanding of the purpose of taking the deep dive into market microstructure by analyzing packet capture files. Saving even a single tick for a medium-sized shop with a modest monthly flow of 10,000 lots translates into $100,000 in monthly savings. This is the decoded payload of a single network packet emitted by an exchange gateway. This is an illustration of a typical market by price order ladder. This is the traditional way of looking at the visible depth of market available on a given order book and is common to many ISV trading platforms. Beginning in 2017, the CME began to broadcast MBO data interleaved with their standard feed and encoded as MDP 3.0 using simple binary encoding. It is note that ICE has always transmitted MBO data, and it is in fact the primary way in which the market data is transmitted. So MBO data forms a queue inside of a queue. The first queue displays the quantity inside a particular price level, and within each of these price levels, a second queue of all the resting visible orders is sorted by order priority. Now, our task is to somehow visualize this data so that we can peer into its complexity, and for lack of a better way to say it, extract useful order book behavioral characteristics. So in order to see what the data means, to convert data to information, we are going to enter the MarketsAI toolbox. We're going to first download this data file from AWS S3 bucket. What we need to do is pick an order of interest. But in my case, because I don't have a book, I have to pick something that hopefully is interesting. So what I did here is to pick all the order IDs and sort them by the number of matches, from the greatest number of matches to the least. And for no particular reason at all, we are going to pick this number here. It's up there, it's ranked pretty high. So for our order ID of interest that we've picked for no particular reason at all, we are first going to generate the built book. And then secondly, we are going to generate the graphic file for our order of interest ending in 2185 here. And what we end up with is we generate this HTML file. So this is a DECE-Jan spread book from October 16th. This is the date backwards. This is our instrument that we've selected that defines the central limit order book for that date. And this is the order ID. This is our order of interest. And the chart displays all relevant information to our order of interest. So let's look at the legend very quickly. This should be pretty self-explanatory. This particular order book has very low quantities of implieds. So you can see them here. They're right there, that brick red on the offer and this indigo down on the bid. These are sort of the core pieces here that need a little bit of explaining. So the lime green is our order of interest traversing the queues within the price levels. And our trades are these yellow bars. Of particular interest on the trade side is that they have the color yellow has some transparency to it. So when the trades are overlaid upon all of the MBO data, you can see in this case, this say quantity here overlaps our order of interest, and that was matched to the resting available liquidity. Okay, so our order of interest is 131 offered. I guess the kind of unusual part of the price is that it's a band. It is not a tick mark. This is used so that the queue inside of the queue can be displayed. Let's look at our element info. So each one of these little rectangles here is a message element. And as I move over them, you can see in the element info box in the upper right hand side, all the numbers are changing, times are changing, sequence numbers are changing, prices are changing. So you can hover over any particular element and get all the information on it. So let's look at our order of interest. It comes on at 12:13:49. It's offered to 131. The order ID matches the order ID in the title. That's good. And its queue position is 130 behind the best offered order. Now, when you look at if you look at trades, the order ID is 0. It has no order ID. It has no queue position. It's 0. It does tell you how many lots were traded. And there is an assigned order ID to the implieds. That's used to position the implieds at the back of the queue. Liquidity is always taken directly off the book first, and then it's taken from the implieds. Moving to a little bit more static information, we have the order of interest stats. The order of interest stats. So the order comes on at 12:13:49 p.m. on October 16th. And it lived for 850 seconds until 12:27:59, or 14 minutes and 10 seconds. It came as an 131 offered for a quantity of 64, which we already saw when we used the element info to hover over that first order of interest bar. And it went out with 20 remaining, so it was not completely filled. The total quantity filled, obviously 64 minus 20 is 44. There are no slices that are renewing and going to the back of the queue. It's not an iceberg. And it was put passively on the back of the queue when it was new. It filled almost 69% of the initial resting order. Now these here, for our buy-side friends who look at TCA, this is the range of all the trades that occurred within the lifespan or the order of interests interval on the book, and it traded from 132s to 131s. The orders weighted average fill price was, of course, 131. It's purely a passive order, about as simple as you can get. It's just resting right there. There is a number of trades that hit 132s, and by not having a sense of urgency and becoming aggressive and resting during the order interval, it beat the VWAP by 0.7 ticks. If that was negative, it would be worse than. And lastly, we have the overall session stats. So the first trade after the open at 9 in the morning Eastern was 133s at 133s, and the last trade was 131s before the 2:30 close. And for the entire session, the high was 127 and the session low was 141. Just some basic information. All kinds of metrics can be calculated and included on this chart. This is a base set to help us understand what's going on. Now, I want to talk about the x-axis down here because this is an unusual feature. One of the challenges in displaying information about MBO data is that it can become very, very large. So what this is a filtered set of all of the events that occurred on the order book that affected our order of interest. Consequently, those are not bins. This is not a time series. They are a sequence of sets of events that impacted our order of interest. This feature allows the high fidelity display of all the information that is relevant to our order of interest on a computer display. You are limited by the number of pixels, and it's not hard to exceed them. So by doing it in this sequential manner, no relevant information is lost, and we can see it. It's revealed. The bars here represent the delta T from one sequence ID set of events to the next. So if you see a larger rectangle, that means there's more time from this sequence set to the next sequence set. I think now we can talk a little bit about this simple order and just sort of qualitatively make some observations. So I like the order because it expresses no tremendous sense of urgency. It is purely passive, so we're not losing ticks to aggressive behavior. And it rests and gains 44 lots of fill. It opened at 12:13, which is an interesting time of day to select. So by putting it on during the midday when the liquidity is low, you can effectively reduce your Q position. So we saw here in looking at the first entry, when it was brand new, it was 130 lots behind. So if you had entered it, say, at 10 o'clock in the morning, you very well may have been passive at 500 lots behind. So you improve your Q position, but it's a double-edged sword. Because perhaps you can have that improvement, but then again, the liquidity that's available is thinner, so it's likely to take a longer amount of time for you to get filled. I do like the fact that 12:13 is towards the end of the midday section of the session. And that's good because you want to take advantage of this. And then perhaps as it transitions through 12:30, although it was pulled before it was completely filled, the activity starts to pick up. So if you time it right, you can get good Q position and then pick up the liquidity over the coming minutes. Now, this order of interest is my favorite of all time because it was my first. It's the first time that I was actually graphically able to interpret an order, and I picked this one. Sort of randomly with a little bit of logic. So this is actually from August 28th, and this is an Ocnovi natural gas spread. Can you tell I like natural gas? I do. It has a couple additional characteristics here. You are probably starting to get the hang of it. The first thing that we're going to do is go over here to our order of interest and orient ourselves to the basic information about this particular order. So it was opened at 10:50, closed at 10:56, was around for 6 minutes. 245 offered with an opening quantity of 20. And it was filled for 40. So that's pretty much a dead giveaway that it's an iceberg. It also had an aggressive entry. And it was completely filled because there was no refresh and deletion of any quantities at the end. That's how you can tell that. This is all built into the MarketsAI program library. This particular order traded between 246 and 245 for its lifetime, 6 minutes. And it had a VWAP of 245 for the order. And the book VWAP was 245.25 for a betterment of a quarter tick. I would say that anytime you have an aggressive order like this, as a means of entering an order book, you should probably deduct about a tick from this betterment number. This order has some problems. I'll show you why. First is the aggressive entry onto the book. Second is it's an iceberg. So let's use our element info to investigate this a little bit. So when it comes in, it trades 19 lots on entry and then leaves one lot. Now it's green and resting. One lot is resting at 245. Meanwhile, everything is getting hit and we're not getting filled. Finally, somebody lifts our one lot that's been resting, and what goes on the back of the book? 2 lots. And you can note it is at the back of the book. The only thing behind it is the implied offer at the same price level. So moving through this, if you take a peek at the initial 19 and the 1, you add those together, it's 20, and then you're getting 2 lot slices being put on. So this was put at a 2 lot slice iceberg for some quantity. As we step through it, we don't know what the ultimate quantity is. Goes to the back of the book and moves through the queue and gets lifted way out here. You can think of the alternative. This order could have been put on at whatever its total quantity was, which in the end we do know that the total quantity was 40 that got filled, and yes, it was filled completely because it was taken off with 0 quantity left. This total quantity of 40, they could have just put this on at 40 and became aggressive, and then instead of leaving 1 lot here, they could have left 21 lots. And 21 lots is not a quantity strange to this book. This is an example of people trying to hide away from nothing and getting in their own way. So here on the bid at 246 is a quantity of 49 lots. So it would not be a big deal to put that size of kind of quantity on there. There's nothing particularly unusual about it. Thankfully for the trader, the liquidity dries up somewhat, and when they put their next iceberg slice on for 2 lots, and they get lifted for 1 and leave 1, lifted for 1 and go to the back of the queue, and so on and so forth. So what this does to the fills by having these 2 slices, these 2 lot slices go to the back of the book all the time, is extend what can be called execution time horizon risk. The longer an order needs to stay on a book to get filled, and this is the queuing problem, the more likely it is that it won't be. So you have a 50% chance, say, of the price going your way and running right through you, or it's going to move away. While the activity of the best bid offer is on at your price level that you want to get filled at, you want to do whatever you can to get filled before it does get away. So you have a 50% chance that you just won't get filled. And that's the risk that you run with time horizon exposure. What I'm trying to say is that this order probably could have gotten executed in less than a minute instead of 6. And there would have been less exposure. Just to recap, there are multiple things that I consider to be problematic with this order. You have the aggressive entry here. You have an iceberg that is in 2 lot slices that exposes the order to extended time interval to get filled. They ignored that the size of their total desired fill of 40 was no big deal to accomplish. I would be talking with whoever did this, whether it was a broker or a trader, to say why. There are times when it's useful to use an iceberg on a spread book, but they're few and far between, and they're specialized. It has to do with liquidity. When can the fact that you have an iceberg help you to perhaps withhold information from the market on this book and at the same time not prevent you from getting filled? because you're going to the back of the queue all the time. And there are occasions when there is only implied liquidity on the best bid offer. That's one of them. That's a little secret for you. Our next order is on a RBOB gasoline spread book from our favorite date of October 21st for no reason at all. And I think you'll appreciate the variation here. Because liquidity on RBOB is much thinner than it is on crude and much thinner than it is on natural gas, we actually have some volatility within the book during the order's lifetime. So this one was opened at 2:05 p.m. Eastern, and it was closed out at 2:38. So it was around for 32 minutes. It was initially 12 bid for an opening quantity of 2, and it went out at 13 bid. Total quantity filled was 98. You will find that there's a large number of just not 100, just not 50 order quantities. So if you're thinking that this was really a 100 lot order and there's an error, there isn't one. People do that so that they beat the assumptions by algos. It's an iceberg on a spread book. So let's see how it performed. But it didn't come in aggressively. That's a plus. So there's a little some patience. And it was 100% filled. I know that to be true because it certainly was hit through for far more than just its order. And it shows a betterment of over a tick. And I believe that it is. This order comes in with an opening quantity of 2. And you can see the 2 lots sort of fits in with the best bid offer quantities. And so it's comfortable there, meaning it's not exaggerated like some big quantity. So the market is racing away, if you can call that racing, moving away from the resting order. We went from 12 to 13 bid to snug up a little bit closer, and the market kept moving away from it. When you see this without a trade, what that means here is that other people have pulled their orders or reduced their quantities, hence improving the queue position of our order of interest. This was the improvement here by 1 tick. This was the patience, the lack of urgency that let them rest at the improved 13s without chasing the market. And then finally, we're smacked at the end, and whatever quantities we had left in the tank and slices of our iceberg gets hit and we're taken out. This is a good sized trade. Somebody really laid it on there. They wanted to sell 13s in a bad way. 49 lots. So overall, just as a commentary, I thought this was an excellently executed order on an interesting order book because of the RBOB's volatility in a spread book. And this is a good application of an iceberg to sort of fit in with the overall characteristics of the order book itself. And that concludes our first pass set of more qualitative than quantitative analysis of MBO data. The hope of the presentation here of this video is that you can, for the first time, actually see the information that's available to you and how useful it is. This is powerful stuff. This is the ability to tune your order performance in a way that's never been done before, as far as I know. So thank you again.